I am so excited to share today's video with you guys because this purse might actually be the prettiest thing I've ever made. Now you will know exactly how to make it with this tutorial. Here are the two fabrics that I'm going to be working with today, as well as some lace. And you're going to start this out by cutting your fabric in the shape of a heart. If you're interested, you can find this pattern and instructions in my Etsy, but basically you'll use a heart-shaped pattern to cut out 2 pieces of outer fabric and 2 pieces of inner fabric. So that's 4 hearts total. Then we can move on to cutting out our fabric for our ruffles and our straps. Go ahead and place both of your outer pieces of fabric on batting and quilt as desired. And once that's finished, you can just trim off all of the excess fabric. Since I needed my ruffles to be 64 inches, I actually had to sew 2 pieces of fabric together. Assuming you have to do the same, place the 2 strips of fabric right sides together and sew a line down the edge. Now we can fold the fabric in half, right sides facing each other, and sew a line down the edge. Then repeat this to the other side as well. And then go ahead and flip that right side out. Now we'll fold this fabric in half again, except this time the right side of the fabric will be facing outward. Make sure to turn your tension to 9 and your stitch length to 5, then begin sewing your ruffles. And do not backstitch at the start or the end. As you can see, we're just sewing along the 2 raw edges. Next, I'll loosely line up the edges of the ruffles with the heart, just to make sure it's generally going to line up pretty well. And if it doesn't, you can go ahead and adjust your thread tails to make it either longer or shorter. But once those adjustments have been made, line the ruffles once more to the edges of the outer fabric, and then pin them into place to secure them really well. I like to start the ruffle at the tip of the bottom of the heart, but you could also do it at the top center. And we want to make sure that the raw edges are facing outward and slightly hanging over the edge of the heart, just so we don't see the seams later on when everything's flipped out. And then we can go ahead and sew the ruffles onto the heart. And when you're finished, we can then trim all of the excess fabric that we left hanging over the edge. And then we can move on to our straps. Fold the longer edges towards the middle, then take those edges and fold them into each other so that you end up with one piece with no raw edges. Then you'll sew lines down the long edges of both sides and repeat the process for the other strap. We can go ahead and attach the straps to the purse. Match the edges up and then the rest of the strap will hang inwards. I'm using a hard ruler here, but if you used like a flexible ruler, it would be about 3.25 inches from the center of the heart to where your strap goes. So just clip those into place and do that for both of the hearts. And this is when I chose to attach my lace heart. I used about 22 inches of lace here, and I just tied it into a bow and then I sewed it onto the heart that had the ruffles on it. And now we'll finally start to turn this into a bag. So take the 2 outer pieces of fabric in the shape of a heart and place them right sides together and then pin them all into place, making sure that the ruffle is facing inwards. So you really shouldn't be able to see it right now. And the important part here is you're not going to sew it completely around the heart. You want to leave an opening at the top so that you can actually put stuff in your bag. If you measure from the bottom tip of the heart up to 10.5 inches, that's where you would begin sewing all the way down into the tip and back around up 10.5 inches again. And we'll actually do the exact same thing to the inner lining, but first let's make a pocket. In this one, I made it a little bit too big, so I'd recommend to make a square at about 6 inches. Place the fabric wrong side up, fold the fabric 3/4 of an inch inwards, and then press it with the iron. And now you can sew a line down all 4 sides with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Place it on one side of the inner fabric, and now you can kind of see how mine was a little bit too big. But go ahead and pin yours, and then you'll sew again right over the same line, but now you'll only do it over 3 sides. So now we can place the other piece of inner lining on top of the one we were just working with, and we will do the same thing that we just did to our outer fabric. So again, you can measure about 10.5 inches up both ways from the bottom point of the heart, leaving an opening at the top. And you also want to leave an opening somewhere down at the bottom of the inner lining only. You'll need to access this later on to flip everything right side out. Leave the inner lining right side out and the outer lining wrong side out. After placing the inner lining inside of the outer lining, you'll try to pin the outer and inner fabrics together, attempting to line all of the center pieces and like the corner pieces as well as possible. And this is arguably the hardest part, but now you're just going to sew these 2 pieces together. And while you're doing this, you're also going to be sewing the straps on. And you're basically done. You can cut off the excess fabric from the straps. And I also recommend making a little slit at the center, obviously without hitting your sewn line, but that will just help with the pulling when you turn it right side out. But yeah, this is it. I think it's so freaking cute. I'm in love with it. And I think it's like the perfect size. She's not too big, but she fits all of your necessities.